So if you're listening to this show, I know that you know that hydration is important. But hydration isn't just for super active activities. We need to stay hydrated all the time. I bet that when you are at work or when you're on a long road trip or you're traveling across country or across the world and you're spending a lot of time in airports, I bet you're not hydrating yourself enough. So yes, we know that hydration is important. It's important at all times, and that is what Liquid IV is here to help you do. And Liquid IV comes in a bunch of delicious flavors, 12 to be precise, including things such as sea berry, strawberry lemonade, lemon lime, pina colada, watermelon, strawberry, passion fruit, and it goes on. One stick of Liquid IV in 16 ounces of water hydrates you 2 times faster and more efficiently than water alone. And you want to know why? It contains 5 essential vitamins: B3, B5, B6, B12, vitamin C. It has 3 times the electrolytes of leading sports drinks, made with quality ingredients, non-GMO, and free from gluten, dairy, and soy for anyone with any sort of dietary restriction. But here's the thing that I think I like the most about Liquid IV. They are dedicated to equitable access to clean and abundant water across the world. So they're partnering with leading organizations to fund and foster innovative solutions that help communities protect both their water and their futures. To date, Liquid IV has donated over 39 million servings in over 50 countries around the world. Real people, real flavor, real hydrating. Get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use code GOPODCAST at checkout. That's 20% off anything you order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code GOPODCAST at liquidiv.com. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 106 of the Go Get Outside podcast. This is your host, Jason Milligan. Welcome back. Welcome aboard. The show has been gone for 3 years, but we are now back and we are working toward a full season 6. So expect a new episode on the 1st and 16th of every month. And if things go well, hopefully we will provide a few shorter bonus episodes in between, but at the very least, you can expect 2 episodes a month on the 1st and the 16th, just like we did in the past. When we took our extended hiatus, I was a bit burned out, and COVID was a good excuse to not have to do it, and I was pretty relieved to not have that responsibility for a while. When I decided to think about bringing this show back, I wasn't sure I wanted that responsibility again. And then I started sitting down and recording interviews with people and talking to people. And it's been really nice. It's been great to hear people's stories again. It's been great to meet new people. So I hope you're happy to have the show back. And I can assure you that I am happy to be making this again. And I'm really looking forward into doing a lot of things to try to build this into something a little bit bigger than what it used to be. No promises, but I'm working on it. Some things are taking longer than I hoped. What is really going to help keep this show going is for you guys to share these episodes, and so I'm putting something together to hopefully make that easier for everyone. And also, you'll probably hear ads. Hopefully, you will hear ads on this show now. That's part of what's going to hopefully keep us going for years ahead. But I don't want to bore all of you with the technical details behind the show. Just know that we are back. I'm happy to be back, and I'm really happy to share this episode with you. So a little behind the scenes, even though I said I was done with that. I always try to stay 4 to 6 episodes ahead of schedule so that I can make sure these episodes come out on time. So I've already recorded the first 7 episodes of this season. And when I was sitting down trying to decide how I wanted to organize those into a program and what episode I should pick to launch, this new season and this return of the show, once I sat down to edit, it became very clear to me what episode that should be. And that is today's episode with Ezgi Kunttas. She is a biologist, originally from Turkey, though she's lived in the States for quite some time now. And she is a person much like me, and I think like many of us, who kind of came to this outdoor community later in life. And I love this episode. If you're not familiar with the show, if this is your first episode, the goal of this show has always been to share the stories of everyday people in our outdoor community because I think their stories are even more important than those of celebrities and athletes and professionals. I think the stories of the people we can identify with are the ones that are really important, and that we all have really interesting stories to tell if we just stop and talk to each other. And this episode with Ezgi encapsulates all of that. We discuss so many topics that I think are germane to this show as a whole. And like episodes that I think are the best episodes of this show, we're not only talking about outdoor adventures and retelling stories, we're talking about all the aspects of our life outside of that and how these things intermesh and affect each other. And with all of that said, let's get to this episode with Ezgi Kunttas and enjoy this discussion of everything, including climbing, finding yourself in another country, biology and the sciences, roadkill, and insect ovaries. Plastics were a wonderful invention that have a myriad of uses, but we have unfortunately become overly dependent on them in our society. And now we use them in everything, and they end up in our oceans, they end up in our food, they end up in our bodies. And that's why I want to tell you about Sun and Swell Foods. They're the nation's first online plastic-free grocery store. They have an assortment of delicious, healthy foods in plastic-free, and get this, compostable packaging. If you don't have access to composting, that's cool because they also have a program where you can send back all your packaging and they will compost it for you. Their foods are 100% plant-based and vegan, 100% gluten-free, and 100% real food. No added preservatives, no added unnecessary ingredients. So if you are looking for a more planet-friendly pantry, shop Sun and Swell and get 20% off site-wide when you go to sunandswellfoods.com and use code GOPODCAST at checkout. That is 20% off your entire order when you use GOPODCAST at sunandswellfoods.com. So I've been making podcasts for a few years now. You're probably aware of that if you listen to this show regularly. And I recently switched to Zencastr because podcasting is not always easy. But Zencastr is an all-in-one solution that is here to make podcasting easy. You can record directly through your browser, whether you have an audio podcast, a video podcast, or if you're like me and you record your podcast out in the field, you can still work with Zencastr's tools. It's there whether you want to build everything in your browser or whether you want to build it somewhere separately and then move it into your browser. Super easy to use audio or video podcast. They have post-production tools to help you sound your best, to take out the ums and ahs, to remove awkward pauses, to adjust your loudness and your levels for you. If you've ever heard me do this show and you thought, that seems pretty easy, I want to go make my own podcast, well, you know, it is pretty easy if you go use Zencastr. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code GOPODCAST, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. I want you to have the same easy experience I do for all of my podcasting needs. I think it's time for you to go share your story.
My name is Ezgi Kunttas. I am from Turkey. I am a biologist. I grew up in the Mediterranean coastal city of Antalya. It's kind of very reminiscent to Los Angeles. Instead of the Pacific Ocean meets the mountains, it's the Mediterranean Sea meets the Taurus Mountains. Very similar climate, a bit more rain, very similar plants and no coyotes, but other than that, yeah, it's very similar. And
is the biggest difference whether or not you have coyotes?
I mean, I guess there are maybe the cousins of coyotes in Turkey, but yeah, I think coyotes are definitely very American. It's funny because I grew up not knowing that mountains were climbable, that outdoors was to explore. I grew up in the city, and I was, I guess, a city girl who was always looking for a tree to climb. Just a little backup, so my dad, He was a pilot at the Turkish Air Force. A good chunk of my childhood was in this military base. Very safe. We just like running outside, and there were a lot of fruit trees everywhere and no wilderness. I learned the concept of wilderness actually when I moved to the West Coast. So yeah, my childhood was like just running around, climbing on trees, fruit trees, and just like my favorite thing to do was to climb up a mulberry tree and just collect mulberries and just find a comfortable branch and just sit and eat the berries and watch the life just go by. I guess I moved to the U.S., to the East Coast, when I was 21 years old. I moved here partly because of my ex-husband was here, and also I wanted to become a biologist. I was on the East Coast for a good chunk of my U.S. experience. It's been almost like 20 years at this point. So I was in Morgantown, West Virginia initially. And it's funny because it was like such a lonely place for me to live in West Virginia because I didn't know anything about outdoors. And I was just such a work in the lab, come back home, watch TV, and go back to work and come back home, watch more TV. And that was my life. And
this is your 20s at this point?
This is my 20s. And I mean, I used to like work out regularly. I was always active, but not like outdoor active. There's something like I think culturally that it clicked like later in life with me. Like I don't know, like in Turkey, like even though I was surrounded by all these mountains and it would inspire me to maybe write poetry, but it would never cross my mind that like, oh, I can actually go up that mountain. Like it was just not like something that ever occurred to me, and it's so weird. Now I go back to Turkey and I'm like, oh my God, there's so much to do, like so many things to see, and like I feel like I have this urge to rediscover my own country all over again with these new set of eyes that I have, the new set of tools that I have. And so I was on the East Coast in Morgantown, West Virginia. It's beautiful. West Virginia is gorgeous. But I didn't know how to like really take advantage of the place that I was in. And then I moved to New York City for a hot minute. I lived in Manhattan for a year. And then my ex-husband was supposed to follow me. He couldn't. And he found a job in Pittsburgh. So I moved back to Pittsburgh, which is like only an hour and a half from Morgantown. So I was like, I spent a good chunk of my U.S. experience in that like radius of like West Virginia and Pennsylvania. And I was like doing my grad school, like I got a master's and then a PhD. And once I was done with those degrees, I wanted to actually like come to the West Coast. That was like a goal of mine. I wanted to be in a place where it was going to be kind of similar to home, like more Mediterranean climate, because I was a bit tired of the long winters and cloudy weather in Pittsburgh. It was just like kind of making me feel a little, depressive. And then for postdoc, then I came to Caltech. Then I was kind of getting used to being in LA. And I guess one big life change that happened, like not too long after I moved to LA was I got divorced.
And you got a tattoo.
That is correct. I have my divorce tattoo because I was with my ex-husband for like 17 years. It's a good chunk of my adult life. I just vividly remember when I moved out and I had my tiny little house. I was just sitting in bed and like crying and like kind of feeling like lost and like I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. Who am I if I'm not like married to this person? And I felt scared. And
how long did you say? I forget. You said most of your adult life. How many years?
17 years.
17
yeah.
Years. Yeah, it's a long
and
time.
My tattoo is a skada. Skadas are like there's the annual kind. There's like the 13-year and the 17-year broods in like kind of, I guess, northeastern part of the U.S. And so I love insects. And so I wanted to get an insect tattoo. And because these are 17-year skadas, it made sense that like now it's a new chapter. I am going to reinvent myself and I'm going to make something different with this new chapter. Yeah, so I remember sitting on bed and kind of, I had a notebook in my hand and I was like, okay, who is this new version of Ezgi going to be like? What's she gonna do? The first item I put on my list was camping. The second item was backpacking. The third item was climbing. And
okay, so I'm going to stop you for a second. So those three things you just listed, you said earlier that you would look at mountains and it didn't even dawn on you that like you could go hike into them or you could walk into them. So when you put this list together, you just named three things that you earlier told us you wouldn't even have thought about. So where did those items come from? How did they end up on your list?
Yeah. So I guess like when I was younger, as a young girl, I didn't realize mountains were climbable. But like over the years, like I definitely became aware of that people actually do go enjoy themselves outdoors, climb mountains, and
right,
I was
see
always
pictures and movies and magazine covers
and climbing was always like something that I enjoyed doing, climbing trees and like getting on top of rocks and stuff like that. But throughout my marriage, I think I had this longing in me to like do more things outdoors. Yeah, just like either like focusing on career and not having that like outdoor culture. My ex-husband was Turkish as well, so I don't know, we just never had that dynamic. Post-divorce, new Ezgi wrote down those three items in her list, and then the question was, okay, where do I start? How do I do these things, and how do I go camping?
Luckily you live in the age of the internet.
Yeah, it's not just about like I was definitely scared in terms of like I cannot just like couldn't like fathom the idea of like I'm just gonna buy a bunch of gear and then just drive out of nowhere and then just camp. Like
that's not the best approach anyway.
Yeah, so I guess I started like kind of looking for community. I wanted to meet people who do this regularly. I wanted to learn from people, and I'm like a community-driven person in general in other parts of my life as well. So I started looking into like, is there anything at Caltech? And
there's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot at Caltech for sure. There's the Caltech Alpine Club. So initially I started like checking out some of their talks that they organize, and that was kind of like my initial entry point into like kind of meeting people who do this regularly. And it was kind of unbelievable to me because Alpine Club, at least when I was going to the talks were like so epic. Like people were like, I climbed this like Mount Everest. No, but like it was like really hardcore epic adventures by community members.
Yeah, there are a lot of students there that go do very impressive things.
That is correct.
Over like a week, and then they'll come back and bring back photos and put together a slideshow or something.
Yeah. But it didn't quite help me inspired me, but it didn't quite help me. Wait, how do I get into it? How do I get into it? Big, it was like a bit too big, yeah. What happened was I heard someone talk about the Sierra Club Wilderness Travel Course. It is a 10-week-long course. It happens once a year. I think sometime like late January until late March. So by the time that I heard about the course, there are like different sections around Los Angeles, and there's one in San Gabriel that would have been a lot closer, but it was already full. There's one in West LA, one in Long Beach, and then there's one in Orange County. And by the time that I signed up for the course, the only available spots were in Orange County. I decided that, okay, every Tuesday night I'm going to commute to Orange County. Like it's going to take me 1.5 hours to just get there, and then 45 minutes to come back for like a 2-hour course.
Right.
It was one of the best things that I've done. Like it was like so beginner friendly. Like they literally teach you everything from like as if you don't know anything.
I will say
that was me.
at the time that we're recording this right now, there have been 105 episodes of this podcast. This wilderness travel course you're probably the 10th or 12th person to mention it on the show. So,
that's great.
So it is this particular course is a course that changes things for a lot of people.
Yeah. I guess like by the time that I got divorced, I was 35 years old, just to give you guys a context.
Right. And then if you do some simple math, that means you got married at 18.
Well, okay, not married, but yeah, I think I was married for 10
you were
years. Whatever.
together.
That's
Okay,
like
you were
together
married for,
17.
gotcha.
But I met him when I was 18.
Right. So sincerely, your entire adult life was with that person, and the person that you had become was you two combined, right? So now you had to find yourself without this person.
That is correct. So coming back to the wilderness travel course, it was so good for me, and I learned how to camp, how to backpack, what kind of gear to take where, and like we did all these hikes, map reading, compass, how to use a compass, and camping in snow, and after you finish that 10-week long course section, then you have to do 2 like experience trips throughout the summer. Where you actually go to their website. They have like the amazing like program, like anyone can go like sign up for a backpacking trip or request to go on a trip. And so you do 2 experience trips, and then there's a graduation, which is this fun party where all the different sections come together in Joshua Tree, and it's beautiful. By doing that, like that was like my first kind of taste in the wilderness, and I loved it, and I was just so hungry for more. And
man, you're really lucky that the 3 things that you put on your list that you had never done before you actually like to do. It would suck if you did the first one and then you realize you hate it, and you still have two other things on your list that are very similar.
When I was like kind of like doing the backpacking thing, I was like solely focusing on that. So once I was done with, like not done with that, but like once I felt like I had some footing in that, I signed up at the local climbing gym in Pasadena, and kind of made my girlfriends also sign up so that we can all go climb together. And so I started going to the climbing gym. Then I started kind of like, all right, this is really me. Like, I love this. I love how climbing takes me out of my head and like puts me right in my body, and it's just problem solving aspect of it, and like just everything about it just clicked. I was just like, I want to go climb outdoors. It really like turned into something that I wanted to pursue. And interestingly, around that time, I had the fortune to meet my ex-boyfriend.
Is there a tattoo for him?
No.
No, he didn't.
Well, the fig maybe, I don't know. Yeah, but
to be determined.
I mean, all the tattoos are for me. Like they are like
Correct.
kind of
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
that is a very
they are
good.
not
That is
for,
a very
like,
good way to state it.
Not
Yeah.
like for exes, but
Correct. That tattoo is not for your ex-husband.
That is
It
right.
yes,
Yeah.
inspired by that experience.
That is right. It's like symbolizes a new chapter. And it was kind of lovely because he had a lot of experience outdoors, and he has done a lot of different things, climbing, canyoning, whatever. So yeah, I will be forever grateful for him introducing me to some of the things that it would have taken me maybe years to discover. Like, he made me feel like adventure was around the corner, that like if we just look at a mountain and is this climbable? Like, and we would just look, and it is, let's go. And it was just really a great experience in that sense. And so, yeah, and then I started climbing more. I kind of switched from the kind of smaller gym to Stronghold. I love Stronghold. I would highly recommend anyone is looking into finding a climbing community, climbing family. Stronghold is definitely a great place to be. Then started kind of like discovering climbing outdoors. I discovered Joshua Tree and realized I was really good at crack climbing, and I love crack climbing.
You're the opposite of me.
Oh yeah?
Crack climbing is my worst. No matter how hard I try, I can't figure out how to not suck at crack climbing.
Oh no! We should go. Yeah, go climb, and then.
Yeah, you can lead all the crack pitches, and then I'll take care of everything else.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I love crack climbing, and yeah, Joshua Tree was definitely, like, it still is the place that I climbed the most. But most of like my initial experiences were more like following or top roping outdoors. I was leading some sport leads, but like leading was definitely mentally a kind of a challenging thing for me, especially trad leading, like trusting the gear that you place. It took me a long time to kind of overcome that fear. And how I overcame that fear was actually through another club called SCMA, the Southern California Mountaineers Association.
Yeah, you just joined all the clubs.
I'm a club person, yeah. And I'll tell you guys more about the Alpine Club too, so because I was like doing a lot of things for the Alpine Club later, like the Caltech Alpine Club. And so yeah, the SCMA, I was fortunate enough to meet a group of really like badass women climbers. I guess we were climbing for a hot, like, I don't know, 4 5 months or so. I have to say I loved climbing with people who were like significantly better than me, because that allowed for me to be able to follow really beautiful hard lines that I could just fall and like kind of like see how it works. And climbing with an all-female kind of atmosphere was so nurturing, and that's like when my mind clicked, it shifted into leading. And I just needed that like positive encouragement and no intimidation, and it was totally okay to break down in the middle of the crack when you're leading. And like I've seen like now many women like when climbing, they just like have a moment, an emotional like outburst of like fear, and it just comes through like tearing up, crying, and then like there's encouragement and like this like camaraderie, and that kind of helps you push through that like wall of fear, and then you continue and finish the climb. And it was just so instrumental, I think, in that mental shift. Then I started leading, and I consider myself still a kind of a new trad lead in general. And again, I'm very comfortable leading like really nice hand cracks and with some variation, obviously. But so I had this list of climbs in Joshua Tree, like all the 5.5s, 5.6s, and also another gratitude for my friend Justin, who is also at SCMA. He became a regular climbing partner that also we were like kind of encouraging each other. And like he's more of a mountaineer, an ice climber, and among other things. But like that was a really like fruitful climbing partnership as well. Yeah, it was just, I was always, I guess, looking for that community, like through clubs, through meeting people, because I always felt like I started out so late in life, like discovering the outdoors. I just am always overcoming like this, like, do I belong here? Am I good enough for this? And I'm always just like kind of questioning myself. And it's great to be in a club setting where I meet a range of people, and I'm just so eager to just go for an adventure. I feel like I'm now 41 years old, and last year I spent most of the year kind of dealing with injury, seeing that my body is indeed fragile and it breaks, and and I have to be more mindful. So yeah, I definitely also try to like contribute in the community setting. Yeah, I guess, I don't know. I kind of lost track of what I was saying.
No, you've done a great job. So here's what you did. For 26 minutes straight, you just told me the story of your life. So you've already done a great job. You've already done most of this podcast for me. I haven't had to do anything. So you don't have to figure out everything next. So you've talked about a lot of stuff. So we're going to go back and we're going to hit a lot of these different things. And at one point, I'm going to mention how much your story and my story are very similar and have a lot of parallels. And I think a lot of other people have similar stories to us too. But before we do, I want to go all the way back where we started, because you're from Turkey. You've lived in the U.S. for 20 years, right? Mm-hmm. I bet a lot of people don't really have any concept of what life is like in Turkey. So if you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about life in Turkey.
Even though I haven't lived there for the last 20 years of my life,
lived in Louisiana in 20 years, so I don't remember what that's like.
Yeah, it has changed a lot since the last time I was living there. But I have to say, Turkey is a beautiful country. It's where East meets West in many ways, and it, like geographically and like culturally, there's just so much history, and there's just natural beauty. And for wilderness, you have to, I guess, like go deeper. It's just a really beautiful country, and I would highly recommend if anyone wants to go check it out. Great food, people are so friendly, and you can find a variety of different outdoor experiences. There's a lot of climbing, mostly limestone. So it's a bit different than here. There are no cracks, unfortunately.
That should be perfect for me.
A lot of tufas and like finger holes and stuff like that. And there are a lot of canyons, a lot of caves, a lot of underground caves. Because it's limestone, it just likes to be carved by water, and there's a lot of water, and so it is a beautiful, beautiful place to visit. There are definitely a couple of through hikes, like one of which I always wanted to do it, and it's called the Lycian Trail. It starts from my hometown, Antalya, and it goes parallel to the Mediterranean. Sometimes higher up, looking at the Mediterranean Sea. Sometimes you are like actually on the beach. It kind of crisscrosses. It goes through where Lycians used to live. So you are hiking through like beautiful ruins, just beautiful mountains, and there are like friendly people, and it's like the total length is around 500 kilometers in length, but that's the first true hike in Turkey. There are a couple more now, but so yeah, it's like very historical country and friendly people, great food, and cheap.
I have a friend who says of all the countries she's been to, Turkey is her favorite country.
Wow, that's a compliment. Yeah, it's really pretty. Yeah.
We went through it a little earlier. You said part of the reason you came out here to the U.S. and headed to the East Coast was because of your not yet husband at that point, your husband.
Yeah.
But also we know that you are a biologist, you're a scientist, you are a doctor. So was that part of the draw? Was it to attend university in the U.S., or did that just end up being a byproduct of coming here?
No. It was definitely like always a goal, and I guess I wanted to become a biologist since I could really, since I can remember. I remember being like in middle school, and people would ask me, so what are you going to be when you grow up? I would always say, I want to be a scientist. And interestingly, the word scientist in Turkish is bilim adamı. It means like science man. Like it's a masculine word, science man. And I would like tell people I want to be bilim kadını means like I want to be a science woman. And I was always fascinated by nature and how things worked internally. When I say I'm a biologist, I'm a cell biologist, cell and developmental biologist. Most of my career, I spent looking at embryos and how, like the beginnings of life, and how do cells go from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 to 16, and then there's a ball of cells, and then they start moving and making layers in the embryo. Then it turns into like all these different organs and your brain, your heart, and it's just like always fascinated me, that process of like, wait a second, how do cells know where to go, what to do? Like, how do they communicate with each other? Like, so that kind of was always kind of the curiosity that I wanted to look deeper into. That brought me here to US, because it's definitely possible to become a science woman in Turkey. But it was just at the time, I never even knew anyone who graduated from a university. Like, I'm the first PhD in my family. I don't know, it always felt like I had to like leave Turkey to pursue this passion.
So tell us a little bit about the kind of work that you've done out here. And I'm sure, it's varied over the years as you've progressed in your career. A lot of your work you've done is with embryos. Is there anything more in depth you want to tell us about it, or the process getting to there?
So I guess during my master's degree, I was in a fruit fly lab studying cell signaling. So fruit flies are kind of a very well used model organism in biology, and we know a lot about like how the fundamentals of cell biology works from those little tiny flies. For my PhD, I was again like using fruit flies as my model system to study, again, cell signaling, but it was more relevant to colon cancer. And I was definitely using like cell culture and organismal like fruit fly embryology. I know it sounds really like distantly related, but when you actually like look really closely into some of the basics of how cells communicate with each other, is very similar between humans versus tiny fruit flies. The advantage of using that model organism is the genetic accessibility, because you can make transgenic animals very easily. Transgenic meaning you can actually modify their genome, and they have a lot of orthologous genes, meaning if there is a gene X in fruit fly, there is a very similar gene in the human, but maybe there are more than one, because like vertebrates are a lot more complex and it requires more regulation at the cellular level, but they're all parallel. I was mostly studying this one gene during my PhD and the role that was playing in changing the shape of tissue. Colon cancer, if we go a little deeper into the science of it, colon cancer is initiated by the formation of these polyps in your colon, and these polyps are formed from a flat layer of epithelial cells that are next to each other. What happens during polyp formation is some of the cells start like changing their shape, and it kind of like invaginates the tissue, and then it then starts changing shape and then makes the polyps, and there's all kinds of like cellular things happening underneath, and then that's one of the initial like tissue deformation or change is an initiator for tumor formation. So we were kind of studying how do you go from a flat like cells that are right next to each other and happily like just flat to changing the shape into the polyps. So yeah, I had a very fruitful PhD experience. I loved my boss, and it was really where I was able to peak in a way, scientifically, because I was just so into it, and it was my primary passion in life, and I was always thinking about it, and how can I test this hypothesis? What about I change this? What about I tweak that? It was just really fun and beautiful experience. And then when I came here at Caltech, I was studying a different question, but again, to do with cell-cell communication. And I also left the flies behind, and I then moved up, so to speak, in the animal kingdom to vertebrates, and because flies are invertebrates, and
that means they don't have a spine, for anyone that doesn't recall that word.
That is correct. Thank you for clarifying. And yeah, vertebrates, animals with spines. I started working with fish and chicken eggs. So one thing that I am kind of, maybe it's weird to say, but as a scientist, as an embryologist, I cannot work with mammalian model systems like rats or mice, because as an embryologist, if there is internal development, then you have to sacrifice the mother in order to have access to the embryos, and that was something that I always thought that I don't want to do that.
Meanwhile, fish and birds, their eggs are external to their body, so the mother is not in danger if you're researching their eggs.
Externally developing systems. So people always say oh yeah, you get used to it, and I'm like, that's the point. I don't want to get used to it. Yeah. I don't want to get desensitized towards killing a mammalian organism. Yeah. So yeah, and so I started working with fish and chicken embryos, and started studying cell migration. So during very early stages of vertebrate development, including us, there are these really unique cells in our bodies called neural crest cells, and these neural crest cells are really amazing.
People listening can't see this, but I can see in her face that she's getting excited.
So, okay, because the thing is, when I talk about the fly stuff and the cancer, it's it's interesting, but hard to relate to, maybe.
Yeah, but now you're talking
unless
about neural crest cells.
But the neural crest cells, they are magical cells. So they are pluripotent cells, meaning that they can give rise to many different types of other cells, and they originate kind of in your spine. So how your spine forms during early development is kind of similar to what I was describing. There's a lot of tissue changes, like kind of overall morphogenesis. So again, you are a flat layer of cells, and then some cells, they start like initiating some sort of change, and then you start to like kind of fold the flat tissue.
I wish there was video right now. So far, she has been trying to give me some sort of visual representation. She was dancing a little bit.
Oh, was I?
Yeah, you didn't even notice you were doing it right.
Oh, okay.
And then she was lying her hands.
Cells migrating, yeah.
Showing the flat cells, and then now she's picking up random objects and bending them to show me.
Okay, so imagine that there's this flat layer of cells, this tissue, and then some cells start to like kind of, yeah, they like pretty much like make their like, if it's a columnar shaped cell, it starts to like squeeze the top of the cell and then because there's the same volume, so the bottom of the cell starts getting bigger. Does that make sense? So if some of the cells start doing that, it starts bending the tissue, and then so this flat like tissue, the layer of cells, starts making a tube. So I cannot bend this further, but so you go from like this flat.
Thank goodness there's not glass in there.
I don't know what was in there, but
it's just microphone cables.
Oh, okay. So it goes from flat to then like this, like a tube, and then it kind of pinches off, and then you have like again like your neural tube, your spinal cord is forming there, and as that tube is closing, these neural crest cells are like kind of where that tube is meeting. So as soon as they touch each other, then they start migrating out. It's this fascinating process. I wish I had I have some videos that I can show you. But
do you have a slideshow you can bring out for me really
exactly,
quickly?
Like I need my like PowerPoint presentation from my postdoc.
Let me know if you have one you want me to forward everyone to at the end of the show.
Yeah, that's right. So it's a fascinating process, but as the tube is closing, these cells start migrating out. So as you can imagine, the neural tube like makes the brain and it's like the length of your spine, and as these cells are migrating out of your spine during the like early embryogenesis, like they start like coming all the way forward to your face, and then they pretty much just like go all over your face and they make your face.
So it's
they
like
turn into
they create the scaffolding for your body in a sense?
Yeah,
Is that the
so
case?
even though these cells are neural in origin, they will differentiate, or they will turn into all the bone and cartilage in your face, and they make your nose, your like all the facial, craniofacial skeleton comes from these cells. Like for example, if you think about like a birth defect such as a cleft lip or palate, that's when those cells cannot meet. They migrated almost all the way, but then something happened and they couldn't fuse again. So then that leaves a gap. So that's a very like typical craniofacial birth defect. Originates from something is wrong with the neural crest cells.
A phrase that I'm sure most people are familiar with is stem cell. So are neural crest cells a type of stem cell?
That's right. They are pluripotent. So yeah. And as you can envision, that's the ones that are in the cranial part of your face. And then the ones that are close to your heart will come and like contribute into your heart. They pretty much, these neural crest cells are all over your body, and then they make all the adrenal glands, and like they're just like, yeah, amazing cells. And
you get to study those now.
Well, I don't study them right now, but I did for a long time, and it was.
And you were very excited when you were doing it.
Yeah, I love development. So yeah, it was really wonderful to like. I love watching cells do what they do, and these cells, neural crest cells, they like migrate in streams. And they do this thing called collective migration. Usually when you imagine a cell migration, maybe it's envisioning a single cell or whatever. These cells actually, they're like literally holding hands when they're migrating, and there are leaders and there are followers.
In a way, is it almost like a really intricate 3D printer that's creating humanity instead of just extruding plastic into toys?
Yeah, it's really interesting because like the origins of neural crest cells have been like hypothesized to be one of the leading causes for like the mammalian brain development and the head formation and all that. So they are fascinating cells for sure, and they like make all the melanocytes in your skin. So like it's just like amazing cells. So. And I got to play with a bunch of different embryos and watch the cell migration process. And after my postdoc, I stayed at Caltech at a different laboratory. I wanted to go back to bugs again, and I missed my insects. So I became a research scientist, more in a neurobiology lab, and that's where I'm currently at. And we are studying insect olfaction and the sense of smell. How do insects smell things, I guess, or fruit flies in general. But I have some other types of flies.
You went back down to fruit flies.
That is correct. I went back down to fruit flies.
You got demoted?
Well, no, not at all.
I'm just messing with you. I don't think you got demoted.
Yeah. But yeah, it's more to do with what happens when an insect is exposed to an odor molecule, and how do the different layers of neurons communicate in the brain and make sense of that information so that they can turn it into a predictable behavior. It's like, oh, that smells like food, I'm gonna go fly towards it. That smells like predators, I'm gonna fly away from it. And I'm kind of trying to characterize the basic olfactory biology of blowflies. These are those black, large, kind of flies that everyone is like, ew. And I definitely don't mind gross things.
Is it correct that a few weeks ago I saw you post some images where you're slicing up insect brains?
That is correct. I do that very regularly. Yeah, and yeah, no, it's I love bugs. They're just so such a diverse group of animals, and you see a really boring looking brown insect on the ground, and you don't even think about anything of it. It's just
right,
it's
but
completely...
it's got its whole internal structure. It's got its whole own ecosystem it exists inside of. It's connected to everything in all these different ways, and there's all these different intricacies we're not even aware of. Right.
That is correct. Yeah, well, you pretty much just stole the punchline from me, but
I'm sorry, I can edit that out. You want to say that instead?
Nah. So the thing is, you can just I can pick that up and dissect it, and it's just this very colorful universe of cells, and it's just so beautiful inside. And I just always felt a certain level of privilege as a biologist, as a cell biologist, that I actually can see, or I was privileged enough to see animals in such a different way. I always wanted to share that knowledge. I want people to know how beautiful insect ovaries look like. And I know it sounds really...
That is my favorite sentence you're going to say all day.
Okay, I have it in my tattoo, yeah. I'm fascinated by insect ovaries. I love just catching random bugs and dissecting their ovaries and staining them, and I know it sounds weird, but
no,
again, I think I'm happy to...
This is exactly why I asked you to be on this show. I'm going to explain, okay, you finish what you're saying, and then I'm going to tell you exactly why I asked you to be on this show.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'd love to hear, because when you asked me if I wanted to come do this, I'm like, me? Who am I?
No, you're great, you're great.
All right, insect ovaries are really beautiful, and they've been kind of this hobby project of mine, and also my friend Dugu, my scientific soulmate. We did this course together years ago now in Woodsole, and we're kind of hooked on insect ovaries, and ever since then I just I try to incorporate insect ovaries into anything. I make earrings, it's in my tattoo. I always try to educate people about have you ever seen an insect ovary? Let me show you. It's always I love it. I just always want to share that privilege of seeing things at that deeper level, and so want to share it.
I'm going to get back to that in a second, but I think it perfectly links into you also then going out to explore. I think there are a lot of people that I've met who are into the outdoors, who are also engineers or somehow in the sciences, and I think it makes a lot of sense that people who want to understand the world also want to explore the world. But I told you I'd tell you why I asked you to be on this show.
Yes, please.
So we met earlier this year when we ran Rubio Canyon with a bunch of people, and then afterwards a bunch of us went to some, I don't even remember the name of the place, but it was some brewery or something, right? And then everybody got food and beers, and we were talking, and we started talking about you being a biologist. You started talking about how you collect roadkill. As soon as we got to that topic, you lit up so much.
Oh, yeah.
And this topic that no one talks about, which is finding and collecting roadkill and all the reasons you would want to do that. I've never heard another person talk about it, and you were so passionate about it.
That's so funny.
So this show, the secret behind this podcast, because a lot of times I bring people on who don't, perform or talk or anything, and then people are like, well, I'm not going to have anything to talk about it. And I'm like, yes, you will. We're going to talk for like an hour and a half, and you're not even going to realize it, and then it's going to be over, and you're going to be like, oh, that wasn't so bad. And it's because what we do on this show is we talk about things people are passionate about.
Yeah.
The primary focus of that is the outdoors, right?
Yeah.
Everybody here is somehow linked by the outdoors, but we're all part of a larger community. We're passionate about the outdoors, but we're also passionate about other things. And you are very passionate about biology and insect ovaries and roadkill. So if we don't say anything else right now, this is up to you. We can just leave this roadkill thing, and people are just going to be like, why the hell does this woman like roadkill so much? Or maybe you can tell us why you like roadkill so much.
All right, so it all started with me liking bugs and getting a colony of flesh-eating beetles. And so the thing is, because I was always I'm just curious about what's internal structures of animals. And so I had this flesh-eating beetle colony, and I started finding dead birds.
As one does. They have a flesh-eating beetle colony.
Yeah.
And how did you contain this flesh-eating beetle colony?
Okay, they're in this plastic kind of large Tupperware.
Because they're not plastic-eating beetles. They're only flesh-eating beetles.
And they don't really fly or anything. They're just pretty easy to maintain.
Okay, so they're very chill flesh-eating beetles.
They are very chill. Yeah,
Okay.
I know. Yeah, they when I say flesh-eating beetles, and then when people see the beetles, it just looks like this boring ass beetle.
Yeah. I think also people probably hear flesh-eating beetles and then they imagine the same kind of
something
thing they
monster.
imagine when they think of piranhas, which is
Sure.
piranhas eat a little bit of flesh off of something, but in movies they devour whole human bodies.
Sure, yeah.
These beetles occasionally probably eat tiny pieces of flesh, not entire people.
I mean, they're pretty efficient in consuming the soft tissue and then leaving they also eat the cartilage, but they leave all the bone behind. So I am mostly accepting bird donations at the moment. No. So yeah, the roadkill
Do you have a P.O. box? You want me to link to a P.O. box?
Yes,
People can
please.
send you random bird corpses?
Yeah, send me messages on Insta, and yeah, I just there are a lot of birds that hit the windows, and so I started finding hummingbirds and finches, and you have to kind of either skin the animal or defeather it if it's a bird. I just kind of love that process because I have this beautiful little bird that I don't usually hold in my hand and just look in such intense detail how the feathers are organized. It's just so beautiful to see all those patterns, and I'm plucking it. It's kind of sad, but I feel it's almost like a ceremony of I'm honoring the life of that bird, and then I feed them to my beetles, and and then my beetles leave me the bones, and then
it's probably way cleaner than if you used any other process, right?
Yeah, so I guess people boil and then pick off the meat or the soft tissue, or you dig a hole and if it's a large mammal and let the beetles and around or any other scavenging animals to eat it off, but it's smelly. So the largest animal that I actually fed to my beetles, it was a possum. I had to skin a possum, and I was vegan for a long time and vegetarian. Now I'm pescatarian, but that was an experience, definitely. Had to kind of ask a couple of friends who hunt to kind of give me an idea as to how to skin a larger mammal. I guess it's not like a deer or anything, but still, it was definitely an experience skinning that possum. And I skinned squirrel. But most of the things that I do are birds, and I really also right now I'm neighbors to a zebra finch lob, so they give me a lot of bird donations that are So then what I do with the bones, I kind of use them as arts and crafts material. I love incorporating nature into anything that I do in life. And I just find a lot of inspiration. So, and I'm just a curious person. I try to lead a life that revolves around curiosity, chasing my curiosity, I guess. Yeah. Yep. Bird donations accepted.
P.O. Box
Yep.
432. Actually, I'm just going to make up a number right now, and then some random person's going to start getting dead birds delivered to their P.O.
That's
box.
right. Yeah.
Sincerely, yeah. When we talked about it that day, I remember thinking, if I bring back the podcast, I should ask her. I should ask her to be on it.
I see. Yeah. Yeah. Very
So
cool.
now you know the secret. You thought.
Okay. I
you
thought I'm
it
like,
was-
wait, who am I in the outdoors? So I was like, yeah.
No, but again, I think this makes a lot of sense, because I think the same curiosity that makes you interested in how the world's created and how the world operates and why this does this and why this does that is the same curiosity that brings you out here. Because you kind of look at the world on a more micro or nanoscopic level, right? A lot of the times.
Yeah.
And then when you come out here, you're looking at it on a much
Macro,
larger macro
yeah.
level. That makes a lot of sense to me. That you would seek knowledge and try to appease your curiosity there, and then also out here.
Yeah. I guess the outdoors is also, I don't know, just like post-divorce or post any breakup, whatever, just not only gives me inspiration, but it just gives me peace of mind. And I find it so therapeutic. It just makes me feel really present. I also have this tendency to try to seek experiences that not most people have been to or doing, like canyoneering or caving was a really great example of that. Like, it just like you are in this space where like we ran LSA last night, and it just feels so sacred that we are in the middle of this canyon at night, and it's just, who else does that? It's just like few people. It just feels so sacred to be there at that time, or kind of witnessing what's going on in the canyon. Similarly with climbing, it's not about like getting on top of a mountain, but it's just like being in that sacred space. It just feels like, some sort of like spiritual experience being outdoors.
Yeah, I like that you said that, because two things that always frustrate me is people outside of this community make assumptions about why we all do the things we do, and they tend to come to two things. One, they want to conquer the mountain, or they want to conquer it, which I hate that phrase. And then the other is adrenaline junkie, which is also completely inaccurate. And what you're talking about is something totally different, which is seeking out the experiences and the knowledge of the world around you, but then also within you by going out there. So I mentioned earlier, and I said I was going to get to it, and now's probably a good time to segue into it, where I was saying that there are a lot of parallels in my outdoor story and yours, and I think a lot of other people. And I've talked about it on the show before, but thankfully I haven't been putting this show out for 3 years, so anyone that ever heard it probably forgot already. So I'm not going to be bothered if I talk about it again. And I'll go through really quickly. So my situation's somewhat similar. So I grew up in Louisiana, and I spent a lot of time in the woods and playing outside. But like I was telling you as we were hiking up to the spot where we're recording right now, outdoor experiences there are primarily hunting and fishing, and not much else except maybe like ATVs, three-wheelers, that sort of thing. And it wasn't until I moved to California that it kind of became aware to me the experiences that did exist. I knew that surfing was a thing in California. When I was a kid, I always wanted to go surfing, but I didn't really have anywhere to do it. And I had seen like climbers in movies and things, but in my head, it wasn't a thing that regular people could do. And it wasn't until I came out here and I went through a big breakup. I'd been, the girl I moved out here with, we had been together for 8 years at that point. And we just got to that point where we realized, and we were together since we were young. She was 17, I was 19 when we got together. And so it was a situation where we were different people. We were not growing in similar directions.
Yeah.
And the thing that made the most sense was to separate. And when you go through a breakup like that, it is a great opportunity to look at your life and say, what don't I like about my life? What do I like about my life? And what do I want my life to be? And I didn't make an exact list like you did, but I did the similar thing where I thought, okay, well, I was always interested in this, or, I think that climbing thing is a thing you could do. And so I was looking for climbing lessons, and I found a club that no longer exists, and unfortunately the person who started it is no longer alive, who became a very good friend of mine, and in a lot of ways is the reason this show exists. But it was a club called Extreme Things, and that's how I got introduced to everything. And so his club, it was kind of like pre-Groupon, pre-meetup, and it was what those things eventually came, and they would do a similar thing. Yeah, so my first backpacking trips, my first climbing experiences, my first canyon experiences,
What's his
all of those things. Carl Domanche, he's, if you go look at an old episode, maybe, I forget which number, maybe 16 or something like that, you can listen to his episode. He also was in the caving video that we did. But yeah, his club introduced me and Erica, my wife, to all of these different activities. And then basically what it did for me is the same sort of thing that the SCMA and the Sierra Club and all did for you, is it kind of opened my vision so I could see what those things were and find a path to get to them. And then I could choose and delve deeper and further into the ones that most interested me. And I think that's really common. I think it's very common that, like, and I don't even think it's always a breakup, but something that upsets somebody's life. Somebody dies, or somebody moves somewhere else in the country, or just something upsets your life where you realize
some emotional trauma that you're kind of
now's the
processing.
time to change it.
Yeah, totally. Wow, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That does sound very similar. And I guess, like, in the light of, like, the club or community, I also wanted to mention the role that Caltech Alpine Club played in my experience in general. I am just a very, like, story-driven person. I love listening to people telling their stories. In 2019, Caltech Alpine Club is primarily a graduate student, and like undergrads too, some postdocs, but mostly like student-driven club. And I was a postdoc at the time at Caltech, and I've been going to the talks, and they were looking for a talk organizer, and I decided to kind of just like, all right, I want to help out. And I started organizing talks for the club. It was one of the meaningful experiences that I had at Caltech in general. It allowed me to kind of like organize talks regularly every other week, and I would try to incorporate not only like these epic adventure stories that people had, but also backpacking 101 and how to use Caltopo, or like what to pack for a backpacking like mule. So I always try to like kind of incorporate a range from more basic things to more advanced talks. And I got to like kind of like meet someone outside, like climbing in Joshua Tree, and I meet someone, I'm like, oh my God, that's such a great story you just told me. Would you be interested in coming to Caltech and give a talk? And so it was always kind of like really kind of a rewarding experience for me to be able to serve the community in a different way and bring people together and hear stories like either for learning or inspiration. And I will miss the like doing that job, because I've done it 3 years now, and I'm kind of like passing the torch to the next person. But yeah, I love hearing stories. Another funny thing about that day that I met you, I've been on the Caltech Alpine Club mailing list for years, and so the very next morning you sent out an email about one of the events, and then I was like, wait a second, I recognize this name. And so I didn't realize I had been getting emails from you me, for like a few years. Yeah, totally.
I will say that that Caltech Alpine Club does have a lot of great events. I've gone to a lot of talks over the years. They host the Banff screenings, they host the Real Rock screenings, and without that there are a lot of talks and a lot of film festivals that I would not have gone to if Caltech wasn't hosting them.
That's right. They definitely do serve a great purpose in the outdoors community, bringing people together. Yeah, we have a talk coming up by Lynn Hill.
Oh, nice.
Nice. It's more like SCMA, Caltech Alpine Club, and also the American Alpine Club, the LA chapter. So we are putting it together, and I'm really excited.
Unfortunately, by the time people hear this, it will have already happened a long time ago.
Yeah, that's right.
That is awesome that is happening. Yeah. So you also mentioned that you were passing that torch on, and I assume it's okay to talk about this. If it's not, you can say no, and then we just won't. But you said that you were maybe thinking about leaving Los Angeles and California.
Yeah, that is correct.
So let's talk about that. Does that mean it's time for a new tattoo and a new chapter?
Yeah, the new tattoo is there. So yeah.
Oh, so the chapter has begun.
The chapter has begun. So I guess so I'm leaving Caltech, and I've been at Caltech for the last 8 years. I just feel like it's time, and I need to kind of just find my path outside of doing the science myself anymore. It just like there's definitely a bit of a shift in my life since I turned 40 that I feel I want to do adventures, and having an academic life unfortunately takes up most of your time, and the boundaries are really not as clear like some other professions. So you're expected to work long hours and you don't get paid that well. And it's just, I feel like it's time for me to like explore something still science adjacent, but not like me doing the science per se. Also, like, yeah, thinking about leaving Los Angeles, even though I love living in LA. Like, I discovered myself here. I discovered the outdoors here. I just love that you have the ocean. Not that I go to the ocean that often, but you have the desert. And I learned how to love the desert. Like, prior to living in LA, like, when I think about desert, I would, like, think about sand dunes or something like that.
You think about the Sahara and cartoon sand dune deserts.
Cartoonish desert.
You don't realize what all exists in there.
And like now I love the desert, the Mojave, the Joshua Tree. Like, it's just so beautiful, so subtle. It looks maybe uninviting depending on when you go, but it's just like everything who can survive in the desert are selected, natural selection at its finest. Then you have San Gabriel Mountains, and it's been like, it used to be, even like up until like a few years ago, I used to think of San Gabriel as more like a conditioning spot for the Sierras. It was always like this stepping stone for a bigger adventure. But then more recently, I've been discovering how gorgeous the San Gabriels are. Like all these canyons and like all these beautiful like hills, and like I started doing bikepacking, and it's been just so wonderful to discover all these local like spots that I can just bike up to and just sleep and watch the city, and then you drive like 4 or 5 hours to the Sierras, and it's just like unbelievable. The mountains, I love mountains. Even though I love all that, I just feel like where I am personally, I need to like kind of need a shift and need to change something about my career and my life in general. So I'm hoping to move to the East Coast, and my sister lives there, and my niece is there, and she's turning 4 very soon. One thing about me that like most people know, maybe it's kind of like weird to say, but I always wanted to be a mother. Like, that's exactly why I picked the field that I picked. I wanted to become a developmental biologist, because I always thought the process of life, the start of life, was magical. Always wanted to experience being pregnant. And so unfortunately things didn't work out for me, and now I'm 41 and I'm made the choices that I made in life, and I'm not going to be able to do that. And one of the things that kind of the ideas that gives me purpose when I think about it is to be a good aunt. I hate that I live so far away from my niece, and I believe if I'm closer to my family, I can bring something to her life. I can bring the outdoors, I can bring the bugs, I can bring the curiosity and the sense of adventure.
Beetles.
Yeah, the flesh-eating beetles probably will stay here, but if anyone wants, the colony is pretty big right now, so I'm happy to hand out. It's funny for the grotto, like the caving club Christmas party, we're doing like a one of those like gift exchanges, like the white elephant or whatever. And so my gift was flesh-eating beetles. So the person who picked it up, they were like, "What is this?" And
then it devoured their arm.
But then it got stolen. Someone stole the gift.
Oh,
some really like they wanted to have flesh-eating beetles.
Missing flesh-eating beetle somewhere.
I mean, stolen meaning like, you steal the gifts. Yeah. But I am primarily focusing on the DC area because I just became a citizen, finally.
That's right. Congratulations.
Thank you. And now I'm eligible for some of the positions that I've been considering at NIH. So I'm going to chase that and see where that's going to go. And I will still be in the sciences, but I won't be doing the experiments myself per se, and be on the other side of the scientific equation, I guess, and supporting the scientists, grant writing, and all that stuff. And DC, unfortunately, there are no mountains, and it definitely breaks my heart when I think about it. The first thing I looked was like, where's the closest climbing area? And that was actually West Virginia.
Which is not that far away.
Full circle.
It's not that far away.
It's like, 4.5 hours, New River Gorge.
A couple years ago, Eric and I did a bikepacking route, the C&O towpath, which starts in DC, goes to Cumberland, and then if you wanted, you could even continue on to the Gap Trail after that.
Yeah.
So you'll have access to that.
Actually, yeah, that was definitely. So I was like, okay, climbing is almost 4.5 hours away. There are no like big mountains per se, but it's okay. And there's caving. Definitely, I'm hoping that I will go back to caving and explore that. And also bikepacking, that was definitely another thing that popped up that I'm like, okay, that's great. So the timeline for all that is still kind of shaping up. And in the meantime, I'm still going to be around for the next few months. And what I'm doing rigorously is chasing an adventure every weekend. I am trying to make the most of my remaining time in LA, and I'm kind of like thinking about it as my love letter to LA. And it's been like a place where I feel like, if like Pittsburgh during my PhD was the most peaceful time of my life, the LA part of my life has been pretty like up and down with the divorce and like all kinds of like career changes and this and that, and it's been the most like growth kind of spur experience for me. And it's the place where I fell in love with the outdoors and kind of discovered like so much about myself. I will miss LA, but I know that I've made some great friendships, and it will always feel like home, I think. So love letter to LA. I am saying yes to any adventure. And another thing that I wanted to mention, actually, like I am realizing, because I've been outdoors with many different groups, many different people. Some are like, more like, I want to go on top of that peak and like hike, fast. And other people are like, all right, you're going to bike and like bike. So I'm like, I am definitely like realizing my kind of people outdoors. Definitely still like into like pushing the boundaries of the mental and physical state, but also like kind of like stopping to smell a flower and to ID a bird, or like kind of just, seeing the magic outdoors. It's always comes back to nature and curiosity, and kind of those, like I definitely am realizing the difference in the different groups that I hang out with and what kind of experience that I have outdoors. Even though I've started out being outdoors relatively recently in life, since the last 5 years, I started to feel like I have something to like transfer my knowledge to the like others. And even though I always feel like I'm a student, I realize that I also can be a teacher. And a friend of mine was like, you are my trad mom. So which it was like really like adorable to hear, because I was like, really? I'm like, okay, I guess like I can be your trad mom. And I feel like I am at a stage that I can transfer some knowledge. I still feel like I have ton of things to learn, but I feel like there are people at different stages in their journey in the outdoors, and it's all about like transferring the knowledge to each other, sharing the outdoors together. So, and I definitely want to organize more trips to Turkey, or organize trips to Turkey, not more trips, but there's just so much to do there, and I always felt like either at SCMA or like some other like clubs that I'm like, I want to take everyone to Turkey. And I want to do that as well, kind of rediscover my home.
It's funny because when I talk to you, one of the things I love is like all the passion you have for all these different things. And then I think, even though you're like, oh, I hope my accent's not too strong, you're very good at verbalizing your thoughts. You might not realize that, but you are.
Thank you.
Which is great. And then I also love the way that, whether you mean to or not, you kind of break down your life into these chapters, and you have the foresight to recognize, okay, it's time for the new one. I've gained what I want from this one. Now it's time to start the next one. And of course you recognize that sometimes there's pain and strife that comes along with that, but it's worth it for the new experiences that you gain from doing that. And so I want to wish you like great success with whatever comes next, and good luck, and hopefully they do hire you on at the NIH, and they're stupid if they don't.
Thank you.
You should take your Beatles with you if you can, because somebody there might want them. I feel like there's so much more we could talk about. But I also feel like we've kind of encapsulated everything. And so I think we're at a great point to leave this off.
And the sun is setting.
Yeah, and the sun is setting. It will be a couple months or so before this comes out, maybe longer. So there may have been some changes. And so maybe you can give us some updates and let us know how things are going. But the way I always end this show, and I know you listened to a few episodes, so maybe you know what's coming, is I always ask, what is the final thought you want to leave everybody with?
The final thought that I want to leave everyone with is, even if you feel like you don't know where to start and how to get into something, know that there are so many people like that around you, and just go seek out your community. And there's just like so many clubs, so many people who are looking to like bring in new people or introduce things to new people, and don't be shy. And if you really want to be outdoors and outside, just seek out opportunities. And I'm just realizing that like throughout my outdoor experience, I just wasn't shy. I just was really wanted to go see places and go do things and chase your own adventure. And there are people like you, exactly like you, and don't feel shy. Yeah.
All right. I think that is a great way to end this and a great note to leave that with people. Yes, it is. Don't cover your face. It's great. When you listen to it later, you're going to be like, wow, I'm a genius.
I don't.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. I'm glad that you convinced yourself to do it and you didn't talk yourself out of it.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah. And now we can hike down where it's much cooler than
That
it was
is
on
right.
the hike up. All my sweat on my body is dry now.
That's right.
I'm not disgusting anymore. It only took an hour and a half or something for it to go away.
But look at that view. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So thank you very much.
All right. Bye.
So we're all pretty active people, right? And we know that once we go out and sweat all day, that we need to replenish more than just the water in our body. We need to replenish minerals, we need to replenish salts, and that's why a lot of us turn to electrolyte drinks or sports drinks. I personally have gotten to where I will no longer purchase those because they're just packed full of sugar and dyes and a bunch of other things that my body doesn't actually need. And that is where Cure Hydration comes to help out. Cure Hydration is an oral rehydration solution that contains the perfect balance of electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb water and rehydrate quickly. The formula is made from all natural ingredients like coconut water powder, pink Himalayan salt, and is free from all those artificial flavors, those sweeteners and preservatives that I was talking about in all those sports drinks. It's vegan, it's gluten-free, non-GMO, so it's a great option for anyone with any sort of dietary restrictions. And it's easy for on-the-go travel. We're busy people. They come in little convenient packets. You bust it open, pour it in your water, mix it up, drink it. You're good to go. You're rehydrated. You're not full of sugar. Ready to combat dehydration? Try Cure today and feel the difference for yourself. Use code GOPODCAST for 20% off your order. So I know there are mornings where I think, it'd be great to have a nice big fruit smoothie, but I don't feel like breaking out the big blender. I don't want to clean the blender afterwards, and so I just end up eating a bowl of cereal. Well, someone has come along to help us solve this problem, and that is BlendJet. Specifically, BlendJet 2. BlendJet 2 is portable, so you can blend up a smoothie at work, protein shake at the gym, or even a margarita on the beach. It's small enough to fit in a cup holder, but powerful enough to blast through tough ingredients like ice and frozen fruit with ease. BlendJet 2 is whisper quiet, so you can make your morning smoothie without waking up the whole house. Lasts for 15 plus blends and recharges quickly via USB-C. And best of all, BlendJet 2 cleans itself. Just blend water with a drop of soap and you are good to go. And if you're thinking, but is it beautiful? Does it come in the color that I like? Well, more than likely the answer to that is yes, because they've got 30 plus colors and patterns to choose from. You could even pick urban camo if that's what you're into. So what are you waiting for? Go to blendjet.com, grab yours today, and be sure to use the promo code GOPODCAST to get 12% off your order and free 2-day shipping. No other portable blender on the market comes close to the quality, power, and innovation of the BlendJet 2. They guarantee you'll love it or your money back. So blend anytime, anywhere with the BlendJet 2 portable blender. Go to blendjet.com and use the code GOPODCAST to get 12% off your order and free 2-day shipping. Shop today and get the best deal ever. So now we've reached that time of the show where I invite you all to go to our website, gogetoutside.com. Look for this episode 106 with Ezgi Kunttas, where you will find photographs and links to everything we talked about in today's show. And if you'd like to talk to us here at the show, if you want to get in touch, tell us something important, there are a number of ways you can do that. You can send me an email, jason@gogetoutside.com, or if you're a phone person and you'd rather leave a voicemail or send a text message, you can call us at 818-925-0106. And as always, and this is super important if you really want to help keep this show going, please run to your podcast purveyor of choice. Make sure you're subscribed, and if you have not, rate and or review the show. And most importantly, please share this. If all of you just share it with one person, I will be eternally grateful. One additional note, earlier in the discussion, we talked about Carl Domanger, and I mentioned that his episode was probably 16 or something along those lines. It is indeed episode 12, and I highly encourage you to go listen to it. It is well worth your time. And that brings us to the end of this episode. I want to thank all of you who have come back, and I really want to welcome all of you who are new to the show, and I hope you come back next episode. And speaking of that, next time on the show, come back November 16th for a discussion with Scott Jensen of Near Zero. It's another great episode all about family, backpacking, lightweight gear, and cooking eggs and orange peels. November 16th. See you then.